Okay, so you want to own a medieval church. You're picturing the whole scene: stone tower, bell ringing across the fields, villagers filing in every Sunday, you up front looking holy and universally beloved. Nice image. Now open one surviving record from 1291 and the picture gets a lot weirder. A bishop's inspector visits one of these churches on Easter Sunday, the single biggest day of the year, and finds the altar decorated with a couple of filthy old sticks, still crusted in cow manure. The priest who was supposed to be there, off in London deciding what to spend the tithe money on. Spoiler, it was mostly ginger. That's the part the hymn books leave out. Owning a medieval church wasn't really about God, guilt, or good works. On paper it was a spiritual calling. In the account books it was real estate, a very specific, very lucrative kind of real estate where the rent is called a tithe. The tenants are legally required to pay it whether they like your sermons or not, and if you play it right, you never actually have to show up. First, some vocabulary, because medieval churches ran on a genuinely brilliant piece of legal engineering. You don't own the church the way you own a house. What you own, or more precisely control, is the advowson, the right to appoint whoever runs the parish. Advowsons were property. They got bought, sold, inherited, and fought over in court exactly like a field or a mill. Whoever held yours got to pick the priest for that parish basically forever, or until they sold the right to someone else. Getting one in the first place worked two ways. Either you inherited or bought an advowson already attached to an existing parish, usually bundled with the manor it sat on. Or, if you had serious money, you built and endowed a brand new church yourself, in which case the advowson was simply yours from day one, as a permanent thank you for footing the construction bill. Either route, the result is the same. You now personally control who gets to be the local priest forever, and what he's allowed to earn while doing it. Now the person you appoint has a title, and the title tells you everything about the pay grade. If he gets the church's full income, he's a rector. If somebody else has already skimmed the good stuff and left him the leftovers, he's a vicar, which literally means stand-in. The income itself splits into two neat piles. The great tithes, a tenth of the grain, the hay, the big valuable crops, go to the rector. The small tithes, a tenth of the wool, the milk, the piglets, the garden vegetables, basically the parish's greatest hits of annoying to collect, go to the vicar. Guess which pile the monasteries fought hardest to grab for themselves. Because here's the twist. From the 1200s onward, a huge number of English parish churches weren't really run by an independent priest at all. A monastery would acquire the advowson, install itself as the rector, pocket the great tithes for the abbey, and hand the actual job, the sermons, the baptisms, the funerals, the being there, to an underpaid vicar. There was technically a church rule against this from a big council in 1215. There was also, conveniently, a well-worn path to getting an exemption from Rome. Fancy that. On top of the tithes you've got glebe land, a chunk of farmland, usually somewhere between 5 and 50 acres, attached to the church for the rector to farm, rent out, or graze animals on. And on top of that, a whole menu of smaller fees: money at Easter, a charge on every plough team in the parish, a cut of the offerings, and best of all, the mortuary due. When a parishioner died, the church was often owed their second best farm animal, or their best movable object if they didn't own livestock. Death was a line item on your income statement, brief but billable. So who's actually doing the work for all this? Usually not you if you were smart or rather ruthless. As rector, you could legally hire a vicar or even a bare minimum curate to handle the whole parish, the sick visits, the burials, the actual religion, for a fraction of what the living was worth, and quietly pocket the difference. No shop to run, no stock to spoil, no horses to feed. Just a gap between what came in and what you paid someone else to stand in your place, arriving every single year whether you'd ever set foot in the parish or not. And that vicar you hired to do the real work, he was frequently broke enough to need a side hustle, tutoring the local kids, drafting legal paperwork, sometimes literally farming his own glebe strip alongside the villagers, just to make the numbers work. Some rectors took the absentee approach to genuinely spectacular extremes. The best documented case is a man named Bogo de Clare, an earl's son who, according to the 1291 survey, held pieces of 24 different parishes and church offices simultaneously, for a combined income of about £2,200 a year. Put that against an ordinary labourer's wage of roughly 3 pence a day. £2,200 comes to 528,000 pence. Divide by 3, then by 260 working days a year, and you land around 670 years of an ordinary worker's wages, flowing to one man every single year from parishes he mostly never visited. Contemporaries noted with some bitterness that Bogo's yearly spending on ginger alone outstripped what he paid the substitute running one of his churches. His own archbishop's verdict was blunt: less a rector, more a plunderer wearing a rector's paperwork. That's the extreme end, but it's also in miniature the entire business model. The tithe doesn't care if you're there, the glebe doesn't care if you're there, the mortuary due definitely doesn't care if you're there, the parishioner's still dead either way. Distance from the parish wasn't a flaw in the system. For a certain kind of rector, it was the entire point. Of course, it wasn't free money forever. Bad harvests hit you exactly like they hit the farmers, because your income was a slice of their crop, not a fixed number. Tithes got disputed constantly, arguments over whether wool counted as great or small, whether a garden crop was even titheable, dragged through church courts for years. If a monastery got its hooks into your advowson, your rectory could get permanently appropriated and downgraded to a vicarage for good. And every unpaid mortuary due, every parishioner who quietly decided their pig didn't need tithing this year was money that simply evaporated because you weren't there to notice. So could you get rich owning a medieval church? Genuinely, yes. Extraordinarily rich if you held several, farmed the actual religion out to underpaid substitutes, and treated the whole arrangement as a portfolio instead of a calling. The tithe turns every harvest into your harvest. The mortuary due turns every funeral into a payment. The advowson turns the right to appoint a priest into a tradable financial asset, centuries before anyone had a word for that. You thought you were signing up to save souls. What you'd actually bought was a tax on being born, farming, dying, and everything loud and inconvenient in between collected in your name by somebody else while you were 3 counties away arguing about the price of ginger.